My name is Joseph, second command of the Pharaoh, Lord of all of Egypt. Here in Egypt, I've learned to play games. Life is a lot like a game. Sometimes it's a game of snake. You go round and round, roll the dice, and hope to get to the middle first. Sometimes you're the lion, and sometimes you're the lioness. I find the game is less of chance as it is like the game of Senet. A game of strategy, a game of intentionality. You position yourself against the attacks of others and position your pieces to go on the offense as well. The longer I live my life, the more I realize that I wish life was more strategic. It's more like a game we play here in Pharaoh's court is called the Hounds and the Jackals. In the prison yard, they call it snakes and ladders. One moment you're climbing the ladder, and the next moment, out of nowhere, you're bit and you go sliding down. But what I'm learning is that though life is like snakes and ladders, it's God who controls the game. I didn't grow up playing games. I grew up out in the fields, a long way from here. I had a father, had 4 wives. I had 10 brothers. I haven't thought of them in about 20 years. My son's name is Manasseh, which means the Lord has caused me to forget. And I've chosen to forget the pain of the past. I've chosen to forget those things I can't change, those things that happened in the past. Until moments ago, those brothers showed up in Egypt. Those brothers I haven't seen in 20 years, they're here in Egypt. And it just reminded me. It reminded me of the first time I got bit by a snake. I was only 17. It was a time when I was much younger and much more naive. Father, thank you for the coat. Oh, Father, I'll wear it always. It'll be a reminder, Father, not only of your love for me, but I just think God has a plan for my life. I had a dream. that the brothers and I were gathering sheaves, and all of a sudden their sheaves bowed down to me. And it was the sun and the moon and the stars bowed down to me, Father. I just believe that God has a plan for my life. I'm not sure why I was naive enough to think I should share the dream with my brothers. Perhaps I guess at the time I didn't know how much they hated me. Looking back on it, it should have been obvious, but it wasn't. A few months later, Father sent me to check on him in the fields. I would have missed him if it hadn't been for a stranger that had pointed me in the right way. I often wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found that stranger. Father told me to come and check on you and bring a report. How are you guys doing?
Here comes the dreamer, parading around like a peacock in Father's multicolored coat. Give us that coat.
No, don't take the coat. Don't take the coat from me. Father gave this to me. But they took the coat from me. What happened next? I don't remember exactly. To this day, it's still hard for me to go into a cave. Sometimes I find myself breathing heavier when I go through the tight corridors in Egypt. I've been used to being pushed around as the youngest brother. But this was more than that. This was darker than that. They dragged me over to a pit and opened the lid. They crammed me down into the hole. They pushed and they shoved me down deeper and deeper into the pit. I began to grab their hands. Let me go. Don't do this. Don't push me in here. No, just wait till Father finds out. I won't tell Father if you let me out now, please. They said there was no water in the well, but it just was deep darkness beneath me. I shoved my heel into one side, my other heel into the other, tried to brace myself from falling further. Please don't shut the lid. Please, let me out now. and then they slammed it. I remember holding on and just trying to keep myself from falling further. I could hear them, so I know they could hear me. Please help me! I'm slipping! Guys, brothers, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And while I hung on for dear life, crying out for my life, I could hear them having dinner. They ate dinner. I laid there all night. Didn't sleep, just afraid I'd fall deeper and deeper into the abyss. The next morning, I could hear what sounded like a caravan, a mate with father come to rescue me. As they opened the lid, I remember coming up and the light was just blinding. About time you got me out of here. Just wait till Father finds out what you've done to me. And then I realized, Father's never going to find out what they've done to me. A Midian trader was handing silver to my brother. Don't do this. They tied a rope around my neck, tied it up to one of their camels. I pleaded with them as they pulled me into the darkness of the unknown. Judah, you're supposed to take care of me. You're the oldest. You're going to have to get account of this to Dad. Don't do this. Simeon, please. I don't think you ever know humiliation till you stand half naked before a group of strangers and they bid on what your life is worth. Though I've been the victim of others' cruelty, here I fell into shame, insecurity. But I was bought at that auction. I was bought by a man named Potiphar, captain of the guard, a friend of Pharaoh. And God placed a ladder right there in Egypt. He took care of me. He clothed me. I was treated better in Egypt by Pharaoh, even as a slave, than I was ever treated by my brothers at home. And he trusted me. He trusted me, and as he trusted me, I more and more found ways to manage, more and more found ways to put the ideas I had, the dreams I had, into motion, even in this setting. We didn't have the Nile where I grew up, so I began to find ways to use the water and to irrigate, and the fields began to flourish. In fact, Potiphar put me in charge of everything. There's nothing I even did he checked into. I was in my early 20s at the time. In fact, I met his wife was very nice. She encouraged me. She flattered me sometimes. And then that flattery turned to more flirtatiousness. To that point, I began to keep my distance. I remember praying. I was 20, never been with a woman. I remember praying, just, God, help me to keep pure. God, help me. Help me not to sin against you. Her advances became more and more obvious. Subtle things like, lie with me, Joseph. No, I will not. I will not. Your husband has trusted me with everything. There's nothing I cannot touch except you. I won't. I'd see her coming in the fields and I walked the other way. When they went swimming in the Nile, I swam with the servants on the other side. One night I was coming in from work after a long day, and there was no one in the household except Potiphar's wife, wearing little to nothing. There's certain moments in your life that you don't have time to talk or bargain or explain yourself. I knew if I stayed there much longer, she would talk me into anything. Lie with me, Joseph, now! Lie with me now! No, I will not! I ran off. I didn't mean to embarrass her. I didn't mean to embarrass anyone. I just had to get away. I was exhausted. I went to my quarters and slept that evening. I was awakened early.
Joseph, how dare you attack my wife? After everything I've done for you, after everything I've entrusted with you, that you would attack, that you would attempt to sleep with my wife, how dare you? What do you have to say for yourself? Potiphar, would you have me call your wife a liar? Or I had been the victim of others' cruelty. My ladder turned into a snake as I became the victim of others' lies. They shackled me. To this day, I don't know if Pharaoh believed me or not. But they did put me in one of the nicest prisons where Pharaoh kept his personal inmates. But I'm not sure anything prepares you for your first night in prison. It's the loneliness. It's the injustice. I thought about my brothers. I was angry at them. I was angry at Father for sending me into the situation. I was angry at Potiphar not believing me and for Potiphar's wife for lying about me. I was angry that God seemed gone, seemed so distant. Surrounded by prisoners, I knew I couldn't be weak. I was tempted to weep. I was tempted to feel sorry for myself. I think it was that night, well, almost 20 years ago, I decided, Manasseh, the Lord has caused me to forget. I'll forget about the past. You can't change what happened to you. God, I'll trust you. And God put another ladder in the most unusual places, right in the middle of an Egyptian prison. See, I could read and write. After managing for Potiphar for many years, the way we set up the prison in Egypt is there was a section with cell blocks where we kept some inmates, but then most of the prison was set up like fields, those who had forced labor, and I kept track of the supplies. I kept track of who had done what time and how much further they had before they could go free. And again, I climbed the ladder. The warden and I became friends. He put me in charge. Because no one listened to my story, I found interest in other stories. Years later, they threw 2 new inmates in. There were rumors going around the empire that someone had conspired to kill the Pharaoh. Didn't talk that first night. Some heard them weeping in the cell blocks. Next morning, I came to one of their cells. Friend, you look like you've seen a ghost. What happened? I've had a dream. A dream? I once had dreams. I haven't thought about those dreams in a long time. God sometimes gives me interpretations of dreams. Tell me your dream. There was a vine that grew into 3 branches, and out of those branches came 3 plump grapes, and I squeezed the grapes into a chalice, and the Pharaoh drank of it. What does the dream mean? The dream means that in 3 days, Pharaoh will receive you back again, and you will be restored. You will be restored to your rightful place. I remember begging him, please don't forget about me. Please tell the Pharaoh that I've been stolen from a far-off land. Tell him I don't deserve to be here. I'm here against my will. I'm here because of lies they're told me. Don't forget me. The butler, the wine taster, after sharing his dream with me, the baker said, I too have had a dream. In my dream, there were 3 rolls bouncing around in my head, and all of a sudden birds came down and began to eat of the bread in my head. What does my dream mean? Oh, friend, while your neighbor has found a ladder, you have found a snake. In 3 days, you will be killed for conspiring to kill the Pharaoh. And 3 days later, the butler was restored and the baker was killed. And I waited. This would be God's deliverance for me. And I waited. And I waited. And I waited. 2 years. I guess this wouldn't be the ladder I hoped for. Then one day, an announcement came to the prison yard. The Pharaoh is looking for Joseph. For me? The Pharaoh wants to see me? And in one moment, I went from the prison to the palace. I shaved, I cleansed myself. I quickly got dressed to go see the Pharaoh. I stood before him. Yes, sire. Yes, Lord. I hear you interpret dreams. Not I. But my God does. My God can interpret dreams. And Pharaoh, you've had a dream, and it's occurred twice. It's the dream of 7 fat cows coming up out of the Nile. And those 7 fat cows came out of the Nile, and then 7 skinny cows came and devoured them, but they did not get any fatter. And this dream has occurred twice because the Lord of all the heavens and earth wants you to know that there are 7 years of feast coming to your kingdom, followed by 7 years of famine. And if you prepare during these next 7 years, pulling back 20%, 1/5 of all of the supplies, you'll be prepared for the 7 years to come. Commit to yourself captains and officers over all the kingdom and all of the empire, that the entire dynasty will have a system put in place to store up this grain, to prepare for the years to come. Well, you hear from the gods, I'll appoint you. You be in charge of this. You will be at my right hand. Nothing will be out of your power or control except me. And that's what I did. Last 7 years, we had feast. And we stored. We stored more than we thought. Till 2 years ago when the famine began. We have so much supplies, and the famine has spread well beyond the Egyptian empire. It spread all the way back, apparently, to Canaan, which must be why my brothers have shown up today. They didn't recognize me, and my language had changed, though I still spoke Hebrew. They didn't recognize me as an Egyptian, but I recognized them. What is your names? We are honest men. Honest men. You're spies. No, we're not spies. The famine has made it to Canaan, and we just need food. We've just come for food. We're honest men here for food. You're spies, come to spy out the land. Tell me of your family. Well, we have a father who had 4 wives, and we have 12 sons, and one of them is no more. And the mother of the one that is no more had a child. Her name is Benjamin, but she died in childbirth. I have a brother. My mom's dead. You're spies. I put them all in prison for 3 days. Then I called them back to me. What's his name? Simeon. Simeon will stay in a deep, dark pit in the Egyptian prison. We will see if you care more about your brother than you do for yourself. Give them the grain. Send them back. You're free to go. But do not come back here unless you return with this brother Benjamin. Bring him here to me, and I will know that you tell the truth. But he stays in the prison until you return. My brothers want to play a game with me. I'm no longer the naive young boy they pushed around. I knew they wouldn't return for family. I had the money that they paid the food put into their grain. I knew they cared more about money than things that really mattered. Went down to prison and saw Simeon, checked in on him from time to time. Months later, they returned. Apparently the food had run out. One of my officers came and told me that the brothers from Canaan had returned. I asked Simeon to be taken out of prison. They gathered before me in the courtyard. As I approached Now there were 11 brothers. 11 brothers. And they bowed down before me. There were 11 she's in that dream, not 10. There were 11 stars in that dream, not 10. God, this is what you prepared me for. God, this, when I thought you'd abandoned me, when I thought you had lost me, when I thought I was out of your gaze or out from under the corner of your garment, Father, this is it. This is the dream, isn't it? This is what you prepared me for. And these brothers had returned. Maybe they have changed. Maybe they're not who they once were. But I wouldn't be naive again. As Benjamin stood up, I could see my mom's eyes in his, her chin. Let us feast together. Join me tonight for dinner. I gave Benjamin 5 times more than I gave the other brothers. We'd see how they'd handle favoritism. We dined together after I had my servants wash their feet, provide for them and their animals, and cared for them. I sent them off the next morning. I asked one of my officers to hide the goblet from the meal into one of their bags. After they had gone, I sent my messengers to drag them back. What evil and divination is this, that you think you could trick me? I am second in command to the Pharaoh himself, and you think you could steal from me after the kindness I showed to you? Oh, no, sir, we never would do that. We thank you for your generosity. We thank you for your kindness. News has come to me that one of you has stolen my goblet. If the goblet is found amongst you, that person will stay with me here in Egypt. Sure, that's fine. Check our bags. We have nothing to hide. I started the oldest to the youngest. Empty, 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 till we got to Benjamin's bag. And they pulled out the goblet just as I had instructed my officers to place it there. He's staying in Egypt with me, your youngest brother. He'll be in the prison like Simeon was. We'll see if they care for the favorite brother, the youngest one. They didn't know I could understand them. As Reuben turned to his brothers and said, guys, I told you we shouldn't have sold. I told you we shouldn't have sold Joseph into Egypt. God is repaying us for our sins. God is repaying us for all we've done. When we took his coat and we covered it with blood and we told Father that he'd been killed, and Father grieved and all of us stood silent, God is repaying us for that right here and right now. So that's what they told Father. Father thinks I'm dead. The rest of you are free to go. He stays here. I thought they'd run off. I thought they'd go home. But they didn't. Judah who'd kicked me, Judah who'd pushed me down that pit, Judah came and asked to have a private conversation with me. I pulled him aside. He said, Sire, Lord, please, if we do not return home with my youngest brother, my father will die. He's old and gray. He'll die of grief. Please, put me in your prison. Put me in prison for my whole life if you need to, but we cannot return. We cannot return to Canaan without my youngest brother. Maybe he has changed. Judah offering his life for the life of my brother. All of you come near. Egyptians out. Oik! Out, all of you. Come near. I am Joseph. Is my father really alive?
I am Joseph, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. Do not be afraid. Come near to me. I see that you have changed. Do not be grieved or angry at yourself, for you did not send me to Egypt. God did. That I could be part of saving lives. Tell Father that I'm alive. Tell him of all the glory that God has used me to be Lord of Egypt. A father, mentor to the Pharaoh, one who is caused to rule over all the empire. Tell Father to come to me in Judah. Am I in the place of God? I will forgive you. More than that, for all of you, I will provide for you. I will watch over you and your families and your children. I will care for you. What you intended for evil, God intended for good, for the saving of many lives. This famine has gone on for 2 years, but there are still 5 to come. So tell Father to come and to live here in Egypt with me. Benjamin, I am your brother. You never knew your mother. Let me tell you about her. Months later, Father came. 20 years I haven't held my dad. Father. Oh, Father. Your father told me of the great promise to Abraham. Jehovah Jireh, God the provider. That one day there would be a Messiah who, like me, would come to his brothers. But instead of being accepted, he would be condemned. He too would be lied about. He too would be thrown into darkness. He too would thought to be dead and later be found alive. He too would turn to those who betrayed him, to those who had been cruel to him, to those who had killed him. And one day a Messiah would say to them, what you intended for evil, God used for good. And he said, son, you are a picture of God's ultimate plan. Me. I guess what I realized is life is not so much a game to be played, whether it's luck, whether it's strategy, whether it's snakes and ladders. It's more a story. It's more a story. And God is the author.